Welcome, everybody, and thanks for joining us for this Tech Takes podcast. It's a security conference special, and it is based around Jisc SOC service. I'm joined here today by Mark Worthington, the SOC manager, and Paul Nee, the head of security operations. First question is for you, Matt. So how does the SOC actually operate during an attack?
Okay, so in order for me to answer this question, it's probably worthwhile providing a little bit of context as to the onboarding journey. So part of that onboarding journey, we look to harden your infrastructure, not only to prevent attacks, prevention is always better than cure, but to help increase our visibility to things. We can't respond to what we can't see. So as part of those hardening workshops, we look at your EDR configurations, your identity configurations, your Active Directory environments and cloud environments, to improve our visibility and then therefore our response capability. It's also worthwhile me just mentioning here that the SOC is built on top of our existing Jisc services, services including your membership. You're already eligible for incident response, for threat intelligence services. We provide DDoS mitigation services. And this is all encompassing, if you like, in the SOC offering. We're building on top of that to again makes our visibility and response capability that much more beneficial. One of the things that we do on the Janet network is we hunt for the likes of beaconing activity using that NetFlow visibility. We hunt for data exfiltration activity. We do all this right now for our Janet connected members, but the SOC steps in and goes that bit further. It extends our visibility and response capability beyond the limitations of the Janet network, beyond that NetFlow visibility, and it allows us to respond to threats inside your infrastructure and inside your environment using co-managed EDR platforms. To respond to threats on your endpoints, to respond to threats against the likes of Active Directory using our identity protection solutions, which then also means that we were able to contain at different levels as well. We've got containment capability against endpoints, identities, and also at the network level, just in case that incident creeps into what looks like a P1 severity incident, the likes of domain compromises, ransomware attacks, and large-scale breakouts and data exfiltration attacks. If we need to, we have the capability to respond at the ISP level to sinkhole all of your ingress and egress traffic to make sure that we're locking the threat actor out, completely out the door, if you like. So as and when a detection is triggered for the SOC, whether that's from our network visibility, whether it's from your EDR and your security stack, whether it's from log sources from your wider infrastructure environment, it's probably important for me to mention that we don't just look at those co-managed EDR platforms. We ingest logs from the likes of your gateways, your VPN infrastructure, your virtual host infrastructure and such into our Splunk environment to provide us with more enriched visibility and response capability. And as and when a detection drops, the SOC analysts work to first of all understand the depth, with the scope, the depth, the severity of the incident. We work to understand whether it's an actual incident. Is it a false positive? Is it benign positive? Is it something that warrants response? What were the actions and objectives and activity leading up to the detection? Did the EDR and the security stack actually block the detection? Was there any other actions and objectives following that detection, which maybe tells us there's more persistence and potentially a wider compromise at hand? And once we've built up a picture of events and we've got high confidence behind compromise activity, and then that's escalated to a level 2 response analyst who corroborates those findings and moves into those containment elements that I spoke about earlier.
This was for you, Paul. So when you're comparing SOC service providers, what questions should you be asking?
That's a great question, Ben. So I think it's fair to say that a key thing I always tell people is that not all SOCs are alike. There's varying levels of SOC service. Quite a lot of providers will be selling a SOC service, but actually it's more of a managed SIEM, and they're really from an operational perspective, just taking in logs and alerts and then just sending responses to you to tell you things are going on, and kind of taking what Mark said earlier on is understanding, is it monitoring what level of response you provide? That's a really, really key aspect when we look at especially things like SLAs, for example. So a number of providers will stipulate an SLA. It might be a 1 hour for a P1, for example. But actually that response is just an email to tell you something's going on or something's happened. Whereas with the Jisc SOC service, we very much include that response element that analyzing and where necessary containment piece. So it's really important when you're talking to providers is what does that actually look like when you say it's a 1 hour SLA? What does that mean? What are you doing? As I say, that's not always clear. I think it's also really, really important to understand if there are hidden costs when you're looking at it from a procurement perspective. So quite often with other SOC providers, a lot of the additional work that we've kind of baked into the SOC service as part of the overall cost is, as Mark's already mentioned, that security hardening. We also do regular annual SPA assessments. We review your Defender installation and configuration, your Active Directory during onboarding, but also periodically after onboarding as part of that kind of continuous improvement piece. So it's really important to understand quite a lot of providers. The service will cost X, but onboarding will cost Y. And often that's a one-off additional charge and can be, many, many thousands of pounds additional on top of what you're already purchasing. I think also it's really important to understand, again, what you're getting from the SOC service. So when you think about protect, detect, respond, recover, are they covering all of those elements? Quite lots of SOCs will just do that detect. From Jisc's perspective, you get instant response, you get the digital forensics piece. So asking your providers, when you're comparing us to others, does it include instant response? Does it include digital forensics? Does it include that onboarding? Or are all of these things additional costs? Quite often they are. So when you're comparing the two services or lots of services, it's really important. I think as well, having some sort of assurance is really key. It's all well and good onboarding a customer onto a SOC, but how do you actually know that they're getting and seeing the right data, they're getting detections, and actually how they respond to it? You don't want to leave that until you actually have a real incident. You want to have some assurance and test that. So certainly with Jisc SOC service as part of that onboarding process before you go live, we run simulated detections to your organization so that we can see those alerts and when we respond to them. So it gives you the assurance as a customer that we will be responding in a particular way and how we respond and how we do that containment piece. And I think just really the final piece is the question around how is this service going to improve my security posture? And that's a really key differentiator. So from the SOC service, our SOC service from Jisc, we want to help improve your security posture as you go along. It's not just a case of us sitting there and our team sitting there and detecting things and then responding and telling you what's going on. We want to do proactive threat hunting and to identify threats within the infrastructure, but also then help you improve your security controls and your security posture throughout the life cycle of that service.
Thanks for that, Paul. So lots to think about. Jisc SOC service, how does the 24/7 cover and protection work?
Thanks, Ben. Yeah, so the SOC service operates as a detect and response service 24/7. What we do is we leverage in-hours human-operated triaging processes and human-led and operated response. Out of hours, we utilize automation for the detection, but human-level response out of hours. And what we're doing there really is we're emphasizing the importance of the response. So in a lot of 24/7 services that might have, for example, or might state eyes on glass monitoring, quite a lot of, in a 24/7 context, quite a lot of those providers, they'll have low-level analysts that are doing the kind of graveyard shift that are looking at those alerts and then determining whether or not those alerts should be passed on to a level 2. Quite often those level 2s are on call anyway. They're not working. They're not running the service as part of the eyes on glass, and they then get contacted. So what Jisc SOC does is it takes away that lower level triage piece out of ours, and we've built a number of automation rules leveraging Defender and CrowdStrike, high confidence alerts that we know if we see a certain level of detections, we'll respond to that. That will then engage our instant response team immediately. They will then jump on the alert and then take whatever action. And again, we've tested this process end to end, both live and with customers and with drill tests as well. And it works really effectively. And you're not relying then on lower level analysts out of hours. When things happen out of hours, you want that response as quickly as possible, and you want highly skilled people, which is what we do. We only have seniors and leads dealing with and experienced people like Mark and Ben to deal with those out of hours responses, because we want to ensure that they're dealt with effectively. I think also what's really important to think about, and again, another question kind of in the future is, what role does AI play in this sort of situation? There is a likelihood in the future, certainly for things like out of hours, that AI will be used to complement that automated triaging process before engaging a human response. And that is one of the use cases that certainly we will be looking at in the future as well, and a number of SOC providers will be doing. But from our perspective, that 24/7 monitoring response, the key priority for us is making sure there's an effective response and we can stop the threat as quickly as possible out of hours. I think it's also worth just finally noting is the volume of alerts massively decreases out of hours for members, and we've seen this during live customer service. And with that, most operations, it's not like banks. Our members are not running a full-blown service 24/7. They're not teaching and learning 24/7. So having someone sat there 24 hours or out of hours at least anyway, waiting for an alert to drop is also a highly inefficient way of doing it.
Yeah, it does make sense with Jisc obviously being an education-focused company, tailor that service to education and the needs of education.
Correct. Sector-specific education and research, that is key, and that's why we've built it the way we've built it.
Excellent. Mark, in the past 12 months and more recently, and certainly here at the conference, there's been a lot of noise and a lot of talk about Defender for Identity and identity protection generally. Can you tell us why that is at the moment, and why that's such a prevalent piece?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thanks, Ben. So, identity protection solutions, we've been very careful and conscious to bake this into the SOC offering, because it provides not just a more robust response capability, as I was mentioning earlier. We can isolate those identities as well as the endpoints now, which means that containment element is much more effective. But it also gives us much more visibility. So the way that these identity protection solutions and products work is that they pick up on attacks towards Active Directory, whether that's from towards identity and access management solution, whether that's from EDR and onboarded devices, or whether it's from completely unmanaged and onboarded devices. These identity protection solutions will pick up on attacks and reconnaissance from connections and access over VPNs, for example, from potentially IoT devices, from personal devices and such. And that bridges that gap, really, that visibility gap that without that solution, we wouldn't have. Again, we can't respond to what we can't see. The other sort of essential sort of requirement as to why Defender for Identities is needed is that by default and natively, EDR solutions don't pick up on these attack techniques. Even if you've got EDR deployed to your domain controllers, it will not pick up on the likes of Kerberos roasting activity, Pasta hash activity, DC sync activity. It's just not there to do that. That's not part of that product. It needs a separate identity protection solution. That's why we've mandated those products as part of the requirements for our SOC.
Yeah, and just to add on to that as well, I think it also plays into that defense in depth thing. There are so many EDR bypass tools available now. That is the direction of travel for threat actors. And although EDR is a really, really important tool in the arsenal, you need other tools like identity protection to allow that defense in depth piece.
Yeah, but thanks for your input as well on the end there, Paul.